You are a Locked On Braves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves postcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley alongside Jake Mastroianni as we wrap up a very profitable weekend for the Braves bats and a series win for a club that was definitely looking to reverse its fortunes and does so upon coming home to play still more American League teams. It has been a bit of a strange ride for the Braves for a number of different reasons, and they really haven't seen a whole lot of clubs in their own league, but they'll be equal opportunity, beat up on whoever they need to. And over the weekend, it was the Tampa Bay Rays team that has also been struggling. The Braves grabbed their wins on Friday and Saturday, came up short on Sunday, but there was more offense on display throughout. We're going to talk all about that and, of course, update you on the injury status of Michael Harris II, which is going to change the Braves' plans in the lineup, among other things. And we'll get you set up for the series between the Braves and Tigers, which will get started at Truist Park on Monday. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube. We'd appreciate that. Also, subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Before we get started, I got to let you know this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download that Game Time app today. Create that account. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, Jake, when we talked on Friday, we thought that the Braves were continuing to make strides at the plate. Maybe we were starting to see the beginning of a trend based on the win over Baltimore and what they were doing to start the weekend. But as we watch this Braves team play, particularly at the plate, over the course of this weekend, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that all their woes are solved forever, but it certainly looked a lot more like the Braves team that we expected.
It did. A lot of home runs, and that's what we've come to expect from this team. And, maybe the weather conditions had finally just gotten right for them. Whatever the case may be, it was definitely a nice sign for this team. And I think it's because of one person in particular, and I know we'll get into it, but Austin Riley.
Yep. Just
a weekend that he had. I mean, he is the guy in the middle of the offense that you want to get going. Ozuna and Olsen have kind of been that for a little while now. But you get Riley going like this offense just is going to take off.
Yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game. In addition to your individual numbers, the more guys that you get going, as we saw a year ago, the more special things can happen for an offense. And Austin Riley needs to be one of those guys who is clicking as the Braves lineup looks to click in the bigger sense. Now, there will be some moving pieces. We have found that out this year already with the loss of Ronald Acuna Jr., and now Michael Harris is going to be down for a number of weeks, and we'll get into that later, I promise. But whoever was posing as the Braves offense over the 6-week stretch prior to really the finale, I guess, against Baltimore, if we want to kind of break it down, that group has left town. And now this group that was in town, it was a home run fest over the course of the weekend. 22 runs scored, 4 straight games with 6+ runs, 9 home runs this weekend against the Rays. Austin Riley homered in all 3 games. You also saw multiple homers for Jared Kelenic and Marcell Ozuna. It was just an all-around slugfest for this Braves lineup, and you need to see it, as much of the 1 through 9 as you can. But I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're going to get this offense going, the biggest bats have got to be the ones that help carry the weight. Marcell Ozuna has done that and then some. Matt Olson has started to do that over the past probably 3 weeks to a month. But you had to see Austin Riley get this thing going, and this was the kind of weekend he'd been waiting for a while.
Yeah, it was good for him, obviously to get it. I know it became an emotional weekend for him there at the end, but
right.
It's the guy. He's typically your number 3 hitter, and he is that guy that has the big power, the more consistent hitter. That's why you typically have him there, and it just hasn't been that for him. And I've talked about it a lot. That first month, he was struggling, then started turning things around beginning of May, and then you got the injury that set him back a couple of weeks, and he didn't get on the IL, so there was no easing back into it. He was put straight in to not even number 3 spot. He got changed in the order too. They had to put him in the number 2 spot because of the Acuna injury, and it just seems like it's taking him even longer to try to get back. And I've said this too about the offense. I'm gonna need to see more than even this to really believe that they're fully kind of back. But it was an impressive weekend. But even more so to that, getting back to the point, Riley, it had to feel great for him. And they had bat on Sunday, a long at bat, fouling off a bunch of tough pitches, and then to get that pitch and drive it out where he did. I mean, it shows the power that he has. It's there. And again, I know a lot of us weren't worried. I mean, this is a guy that's been in the MVP conversation for years now. You knew it's coming. But to see it come out like this, 3 home runs all year coming in, 3 home runs on the weekend, just a truly incredible weekend for Austin Riley.
Yeah, I mean, any weekend that you can double your yearly home run output is typically good. You just don't want that to be happening if you're a slugger like Austin Riley, who's used to hitting 35 plus, to be doubling your home run total with a 3-homer weekend the second week of June. But we know it's been a grind. It's been a grind for a lot of these Braves hitters, that's for sure. Looking at Saturday's game, a 9-2 win for Atlanta. Lots of home runs there. Of course, Riley was in the middle of that. Ozuna, Kelnick, Olson. It'd been a while since we'd seen a 3-homer inning from the Atlanta Braves. That just had not been in the DNA here in 2024. That's changed quite a bit over the weekend. It feels like home runs are back in play. I know somebody was joking on social media, at least in my feed. I forget who, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Maybe the wrong set of baseballs got sent to Atlanta for this weekend series against the Rays. But whatever the case is, and I think it has more to do with the talent than which baseballs they're using. This was a return to form for the Braves offense in a number of different ways. 9-2 win on Saturday. The 6-8 loss that occurred on Sunday was, I think, as much or more about the struggles of Hurston Waldrop, which we'll get into later on the show, than the offense's inability to answer. That was a good back-and-forth battle. You just kind of felt like it was one of those. There's been a few of these this year where the Braves, they ran out of outs, and it got away from them a little bit more late, but it felt like for a moment, especially after the Riley home run, which I know was emotional for reasons we'll also get into in just a little bit, it just kind of felt like this team is starting to find its way in a number of different ways that extend beyond simply what are the numbers that we're looking at. It's starting to look and feel and perform like a club that did the things it did a year ago.
And it's to the point now, watching that game, I felt like they're going to come back. And, it's almost getting that feeling that you had last year where it's, it's okay. They get a couple of runners on, they scratch a couple across, they cut the lead in half, get it to 2, and then you just know you're in striking distance. And so it's good to have that feeling again. I know it didn't work out quite like that. But again, it's even as short a sample size that we have to work with here now, I still had that feeling. I felt, after Riley hit the home run, I said, okay, they're going to win. That's what they did all last year, and that's what they've become accustomed to. Really, not even last year. I mean, last 6 years, this is what we've come to expect from this team and this offense. They're just not out of any game. And so to be able to have those feelings back as a fan, I'm sure the team feels that as well, where it just doesn't matter what the deficit is anymore. They feel like they can come back, they can strike back quickly and cover up any deficit.
Yeah, they really have started to look like that team again, most certainly. To go back to Austin Riley's overall weekend and the output that he had, not only did he double his home run total, but it just seemed like he had gotten, just a bit recalibrated at the plate, which felt like for so long it was really all he needed. It wasn't like the hard hit contact had disappeared. The launch angle was off just a little bit, but maybe that was true of a few different Braves hitters. You had to feel like at some point, and I'm with you, worry's not the word. Panic is certainly not the word. But when was it going to start to turn around for him? And as it turns out, it did over the course of this weekend. Now, I know it was a very emotional day, as you touched on a moment ago, because Mike Brumley, who had been a hitting instructor in the Braves system, who had formed a very close bond with Riley, really helped him, I think, kind of find himself at the plate during the early part of his major league career. Tragically passed away in a car accident. So first and foremost, we send our condolences out to Mike Brumley, his family, his friends, and of course, Austin Riley included, who were mourning the loss of Brumley, discovering that news in the early hours of the morning. He went out and played this baseball game, hit that home run. And I know that, sports has a way of giving us these moments, and we all have, the human emotions and then everything that you get from the game. But that had to be a very meaningful shot for Austin Riley as he tied up that game in the 8th inning.
Yeah, it certainly had to be. I mean, as somebody who suffered a significant loss this year, I mean, it's, we look to sports ourselves as fans as kind of, that distraction, and, Riley being that sport, sometimes it just helps to get back out there, but, you still have those raw emotional feelings of losing somebody like that. And that was on his mind and playing into his motions. So it doesn't necessarily make it any easier, but, again, that's something that, he's obviously going to be thinking about, and somebody that's going to be on his heart and his mind for a while.
Most certainly. And of course, again, our thoughts and our support goes out to the Brumley family, the Braves organization, and Austin Riley among those who were affected by this loss. As you look at the overall course of the weekend for the Braves, it did seem like they were able to get some things right. But there were a few things that went on the mound that may not have been quite according to plan. We're going to talk about some of those. And, of course, we've got to talk a little bit more about Michael Harris's injury, which once again changes the complexion of the Braves lineup for what looks like it's going to be a significant amount of time. We'll get into that. And we will preview what's coming up with the Detroit Tigers rolling into town for a 3-game set at Truist Park as the homestand continues. And we'll do all of that as the postcast continues right here on Locked On Sports. Here on the Locked On Braves postcast, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. And what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A-plus rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and you just need that help to correctly file it, you can call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. That number again, 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. So a lot to get to and a lot to unpack from the Braves' offensive explosion over the course of the weekend. 2 games since we last spoke here on the show. Braves picking up that 9-2 win on Saturday, come up short on Sunday in a back-and-forth battle, 8-6, as the Rays are able to avoid the sweep. Let's talk a little bit about the men on the mound, at least the ones who started these games. I thought Charlie Morton was pretty solid on Saturday against his old club, certainly gave the Braves everything they needed to kind of lay the foundation, and the offense took care of the rest, exploding in the middle innings to really put that game away. Things that went on Sunday, a little bit of a different story, but Jake, I thought that Charlie Morton had himself kind of a return to form, which was, I think, what we were hoping for coming into that start.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that kind of year for Charlie Morton. Kind of feels like it's up and down. He's still trying to figure out, how he wants to attack hitters. But in this one, talked about it coming in. I know on the Friday postcast, Tampa Bay is a team that strikes out a lot, and Charlie Morton still has a lot of good strikeout stuff, as he showed you, with 8 strikeouts in 6 innings, only 3 hits allowed. Did give up the 2 walks, but just a 1 earned run. So, this was, again, that Charlie Morton that, we see more often than not. Again, I'm not trying to say that Charlie Morton hasn't been a good pitcher. He certainly is. I know we say it all the time. If he's your 4th starter and that's
right,
what you're complaining about, I mean, it's not really much to complain about. So, but yeah, great game for him against his old team, and to help the Braves get that series win. I mean, we haven't talked about that too many times. So to be able to go out and have a good outing like that, and it took the offense a little while, to get going in that one. So you really needed him to put up those zeros early on until the offense could get that big hit. So great outing from him, like I said, and locking up that series win.
Yeah, and you definitely needed that, because as you look throughout the course of this month, the Oakland series, in which the Braves, they really just finished a series which started in May. They took 2 out of 3 there, had the split in Boston, then lost 3 out of 4 to the Nationals, lost 2 out of 3 to the Orioles. So prior to the Oakland series, of course, they had lost a series to both the Pirates and the Nationals. And so it had been a minute since we had talked about a Braves series win in the month of June. This, I guess, is the first one in proper. So this has been a month that over the last couple of years have been incredibly kind to the Braves. Maybe it got delayed in shipping by a couple of weeks, and everything showed up here in the middle portion. But the Braves definitely want to take this momentum and move it forward. Atlanta's using some young arms in what I'm going to refer to as a 6-man rotation type of a plan. These typically, Jake, no matter how well-intended or no matter how much mileage clubs seem to think they're going to get out of it, these always seem to run their course and never quite stick around as long as you might expect. We'll see what the Braves decide to do moving forward with this whole thing. The results, I think we knew were going to be mixed when you put in a couple of really young and unproven and aggressively promoted young prospects into this mix, and Spencer Schwellenbach and then Hurston Waldrop. I feel like Schwellenbach has a bit more of a strike thrower's mentality, and that's probably benefited him a bit. And also, it kind of been a double-edged sword at times. Waldrop, you can tell that the stuff is there, but again, on Sunday, he got himself into some trouble, wasn't quite as pinpoint as he needed to be, and then he made a mistake in which a big league hitter was able to go hunting a fastball and hit a grand slam home run off of him.
Yeah, definitely a big blow, but was what became before that. Hit batter, a couple of walks. It just put yourself in that position right there. And look, he hasn't even been in the professional ranks for a year now. I mean, this is a guy that was pushed aggressively. I'm very high on him. He was my top prospect coming into the year. I think he has a bright future ahead of him, but he obviously clearly looks like he wasn't ready for this. And again, that's no knock against him. He hasn't even been in professional baseball for for over a year. So again, it's really hard to evaluate him. I know he said afterward, he's not looking at this as a failure, just something to grow from and learn from. And I think he certainly will, obviously being demoted after the game. But again, there's plenty of stuff there, but there's obviously a lot of things he needs to work on. One being, obviously the control, but I think as well, what we saw in these 2 starts is how to control yourself on the mound when things start to get a little bit sideways, and how to get things back under control. So again, great stuff. Really excited about the future for Hurston Waldrop. Just clearly wasn't ready at this time at the big league level.
I mean, this guy's had 84 2/3 minor league innings to get ready for this. There are some pitchers that, maybe they don't need all those minor league innings. They just come in and they're phenoms, and, that's great. Maybe Paul Skeens is one of those guys, Stephen Strasburg, obviously, but we're talking about the generational type pitching prospects. And this is not a knock, mind you, on Hurston Waldrop, who is also a first-round pick, but more times than not, you're going to need time to at least develop, to get acclimated to pro ball, and to understand the adjustments that come with all of that. So at this point, I really kind of look at it for Hurston Waldrop as kind of drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot being thrown at this kid, and I think that he's handled himself pretty well, but dealing with major league lineups and the ability to execute, those are going to be things that, or at least that aspect of it, is going to be something that is going to be the separator, if you will, for a young prospect like that. And the stuff is clearly there. The execution was not quite there. But again, to your point, he's less than a year into his professional career. And I think that we're going to be able to store away this name because he's going to get more opportunities. I know it was talked about on the broadcast about, how long it took Kyle Wright to kind of sort things out and get himself, acclimated to the big leagues. And he was a highly regarded college pitcher as well. Not everybody has that straightforward path. I mean, we saw that sometimes you can be drafted in the first round and have to wait 10 years to make your major league debut. That's something we'll get to when we talk about Grant Holmes. But long story short, I think that we know that when Spencer Strider went down, it was going to put stress on the Braves rotation. The 4 veterans, the guys that you're expecting to, have really stepped up. Figuring out that 5th spot is going to be a bit of a moving target for the Braves. But of course, when you talk about targets, who could they be targeting in trades about this time next month? We'll start to have a bigger and better idea of what teams might actually be sellers, right?
Yeah, certainly. It's with the wild card spots now, though. It's really, you can't even really look at it right now because so many teams are still in contention, especially in the National League. There's so many teams hovering around 500, and as long as you can do that, you're going to be in the race.
Yep.
Pretty much till the end. So yeah, it's really hard to tell at this point who's going to be available, who's going to be willing to sell, and who's going to be available.
Well, we'll talk a lot about that as it gets a little bit closer, but you bring up a very good point. The expanded postseason has certainly made it a bit more of a difficult decision for clubs who might feel like, hey, if everything goes right for us, we might get hot and sneak into October. And if you're running the club the way that you should be, which most teams do, with some notable exceptions, and those exceptions probably not going to be in playoff position anyway, you owe it to your fan base to at least give it a shot. You owe it to your players to give it a shot. Everybody really is who you owe it to. If you're running one of those teams, it's very difficult to wave the white flag because we've seen stranger things happen in late July and early August just in the past few years alone, including what the Atlanta Braves did in 2021. Now, this was a huge step in the right direction for the offense as a whole over the course of the weekend, but when we last spoke, we didn't know how serious Michael Harris II's injury was. Now we do. Grade 2 hamstring strain. This is going to be a matter of weeks, if not over a month, to get him back because of the severity of it. The Braves aren't going to rush that. They're not even putting a timetable on it. But if you start to kind of do the math, Jake, this is going to push him to an after the All-Star break return. Obviously, maybe it will factor into what the Braves decide to do if they want to go get some more outfield help at the trade deadline as well. This does open the door, however, for Jared Kelenic to get a shot. I think something both of us were interested in seeing if he could fill this role, and that's at the top of the order. What are your thoughts on Jared Kelenic kind of getting, I guess if you want to call it that, a battlefield promotion to Braves leadoff hitter?
Yeah, and hate the circumstances. And I know you posted that on X as well, but I hate the circumstances that he's getting this opportunity, but I think it's deserved. I think over this stretch, especially the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's had some of your better at-bats on this team, and you put him in that leadoff spot, and right away, I mean, on Saturday, like I said, the offense was slow for the first 4 innings, and then he comes out, hits the home run, gives them the lead, and then everybody else kind of backs him up after that, leading to that 3 home run inning. And then on Sunday as well, after the Rays take another early lead, he answers right back with a home run of his own to tie things up. So again, he's been put up really good at bats for a while now. should have had a walk in the 9th inning to put another runner on base as well on Sunday. But even his outs here lately have been pretty loud, or the at-bats have been very competitive. So again, hate it for Michael Harris. Want him back soon. But Jared Kelenic seems to be taking the most of the opportunity that's been given to him to play every day.
Yeah, and what team has 2, 3, 4 different options at leadoff hitter? Not many, I would say. And the Braves, they definitely had one, I felt like, and it may not be a perfect world because Ronald Acuna Jr. being there is the perfect world scenario. You just don't have that. But Michael Harris, giving him that opportunity, I felt like was a good chance for him to show what he could do. And right about the time he started swinging the bat well, the Braves were hit by the injury bug yet again. So hopefully Harris is able to get back as quickly as he can, though, again, the Braves are certainly not going to rush getting one of their stars and one of the players they really need to be back this season, back into that mix this year. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more about this weekend, wrap up all of that, and of course, look ahead to the Tigers rolling into Truist Park. That comes your way next on the Braves Postcast. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch with those killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Game Time has last-minute deals not just on baseball, but up to so many other things: sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more for up to 60% off as you buy those last-minute tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Just create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off when you download the Game Time app today. Game Time, last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. But Jake, the homestand continues for the Braves, who continue their string of interleague play as the Tigers roll into town to finish things off here, and then they will jet out of town with the Braves to face the New York Yankees, which we'll get into a little bit more later as well. But wrapping up 4 straight series versus the American League by the time they get through the weekend, the Yankees are one story, and perhaps one of the best stories in baseball as far as their record is concerned. The Tigers, meanwhile, an interesting club because they've got some young talent who has shown some things this year, but they're still very much a work in progress. But I think there's reason for more optimism in Detroit than there's been for a while.
Yeah, they're a good young team, and it's really built around their pitching. And we're going to see some of that in this series. You're going to see Tarek Skubal, who, is certainly in that AL Cy Young contention. So, yeah, they're a good team. They've kind of exceeded expectations, I think, a little bit this year. But again, a lot of it's built around that pitching staff. So, we'll see. As great as this offensive weekend was offensively for the Braves, they were facing a team that was bottom 5 in all of baseball in ERA, even though I still think the pitchers they went up against were pretty good in this series, including Zach Eflin on Sunday. But this Tigers staff overall has been much better this year. They do have some problems in the bullpen, but the starting pitching especially has been really good for them. So it'll be a tough challenge for this Braves team. See if they continue that good offensive streak they had over the weekend against them.
It definitely will be. And as I mentioned, this interleague run that the Braves are on, they've already seen one of the best offenses in baseball in the Baltimore Orioles. It's a good time to power up if you're going to go face the New York Yankees up in their house, because they've got perhaps the most powerful lineup, trio at least, going in Major League Baseball right now. A bunch of guys who essentially set the StatCast marks, or at least break them just about every night. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and of course Juan Soto. That's going to be a pretty tough task. So if the Braves want to go ahead and turn back the clock and look a little bit more like the club that we saw over the weekend, or the one that we saw last year, that'll probably come in handy by the time they roll into Yankee Stadium this weekend.
Yeah, and Yankee Stadium's a place for a lot of home runs, and again, the Braves are a team that can hit a lot of home runs themselves. So I know that Yankees lineup was very powerful with Soto, Judge, Stanton, and what they're doing this year. But it might be a chance for this Braves offense to see some more home runs as well, which would be good for them to keep that momentum going. But a tough road, tough stretch the Braves have been on, obviously. But I've said it all the time, maintained the last 6 or so weeks. I don't care who they're going up against. They're talented enough. I know they're missing a lot of guys, especially now another one with Michael Harris. But this team's good enough still for me when they're playing their best ball to beat anybody in baseball.
Yeah, and they're certainly capable of winning more series than not, and that's just been something that's been of a higher degree of difficulty, it seems, since May got started. But their pitching has kept them in it, and the Braves will continue to lean on that pitching as their offense gets its feet back under it, maybe finally gets truly running the way that everyone expected it to, including the members of that offense. On top of that, Max Fried, Spencer Schwellenbach, and Reynaldo Lopez are lined up for this 3-game set against the Tigers. That leaves Chris Sale lined up to open things up in Yankee Stadium, a place that he no doubt knows too well. Fried, we'll talk about more in a moment. Spencer Schwellenbach, he's sticking in the rotation for now. The Braves have to have at least the 5 starters going to have things lined up the way that they want to. They've been providing that extra rest for Sale and Lopez. I've had people kind of wonder, well, are you throwing some of the young guys to the wolves a little bit here early on? And you can look at it that way. But I also think, Jake, when it comes to Schwellenbach and also with Waldrop, the talent opened the door for the opportunity, and you don't know how they're going to perform until you give them that test.
Yeah, I mean, both of those guys, I said it when it happened. I thought Waldrop was a little bit rushed. I thought Schwellenbach was a little bit rushed as well, but they both were pitching to the point where, they were pitching so well. I think, like to your point, I think you had to give them a chance to at least see how they would react and how they'd handled it. And for Schwellenbach's case, I feel like he's handled it well. Again, even in the starts where maybe you didn't quite get the results that you wanted, you saw the stuff there, and still the ability to throw strikes. I mean, that has been very important for him, and it has helped him a lot. It's also, I think, kind of hurt him some. I know we've talked about it, but in the last start, it seemed like he was starting to put things together and being and knowing when to sequence some of these pitches, where to throw them, how to throw them in certain spots. And that's just, part of somebody who was a reliever in college. And we talked about, Hurston Waldrop and the few innings that he has professionally. Schwellenbach was a reliever in college, had Tommy John right after getting drafted, only threw 65 innings last year. So that's a guy that still is learning on the fly. But I think he, for the most part, has shown more of that maturity. And talk about Waldrop, where things kind of unraveled on him in the 4th inning in both starts. Schwellenbach, when he's had some things go against him and giving up some big runs, I like the fact that he's been able to kind of calm down and work past that and still, pitch another inning or get some more outs out of him. So that's been really impressive for him. So I'm glad to see him get another start.
Yeah, and I think he'll continue to earn those opportunities if he continues to show that kind of growth. And his last time out, which was a tough one against the Baltimore Orioles, no doubt, he reincorporated a 2-seam fastball that he had more or less kind of scrapped since becoming a pro pitcher. So he's shown the aptitude and the ability to make those adjustments and get through it. And I'm sure given the opportunity in the future, Hurston Waldrop's going to learn from these things. I had Charlie Morton tell me a couple of weeks ago, failure is the greatest teacher. And Charlie Morton would know because he went through years and years before finally truly finding himself as a big league pitcher in his mid to late 30s. It can look very different depending on who you're talking about. And when you talk about a story like that, we've got to bring up what Grant Holmes did on Father's Day. He was drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2014 in the first round, ended up being traded to the Oakland Athletics for the seemingly ageless Rich Hill, who, if I'm not mistaken, was pitching at least up until last year. I don't know if he's active today, but that's just a crazy thing to think about. And in the midst of this, Holmes, it takes him a decade of grinding through the minor leagues. He joined the Braves at the end of 2022, has been working mostly as a reliever, but can also start. And he gave Atlanta 3 shutout innings in his major league debut about, 10 years and a week and a half from the time he was drafted. I don't have to tell you, but I'll do it anyway. A lot of minor league careers are over long before you wait 10 years to get to the big leagues.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of support. You got to have a lot of perseverance to be able to stick things out that long to reach your goals and your dreams. So glad to see him be able to do that. And look, he kept the team in this game. I mean, Braves wouldn't have had a chance if he didn't come in there and pitch 3 shutout innings. And, it was great for the Braves last year in a reliever role. This year, they've had him in the reliever role mostly, but here as of late, they've kind of been stretching him out as a starter. So he was able to come in and give you those bulk innings. We'll see if he sticks around and is able to do that. And has done a great job of it at the minor league level, and that continued. He was really impressive. So you love these stories. It's just one of the great things about baseball is you just never know exactly when your time is going to come. And if you work hard enough, and again, if you have the ability to be able to stick around in it and keep trying it, hopefully it doesn't always happen, but it's great when it does. And we get these stories.
Yeah, it's what makes these stories so special. So congratulations to Grant Holmes on beginning his big league career. He certainly waited long enough, and I'm sure he'd like to stick around for a while upon becoming a major league pitcher and doing a very nice job of it with 3 scoreless innings in his first ever appearance for the Atlanta Braves. Again, it's Max Fried, Spencer Schwellenbach, and Reynaldo Lopez lined up for the 3-game set against the Tigers. That gets started on Monday night at Truist Park, 7:20 p.m. Eastern Time is the first pitch. That will bring us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Leave us those likes and comments. Share the show with a friend and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Atlanta takes 2 out of 3 from the Tampa Bay Rays, continues the homestand on Monday. We will catch you this week. And until next time, he's Jake Mastroianni. I'm Grant McAuley. So long, everyone.